Hi there, this is Steve Spurrier. You can join University of Florida Hall of Famer Shane Matthews and also the two-time SEC Player of the Year every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about the Florida Gators, including news, analysis, opinions, and some of the biggest names in sports. You can find him on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Or you can watch him live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter.
Good morning. Welcome to a Friday edition of the program. It's Podup Matthews in the morning. Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's the weekend, folks. You finally made it here. Got a good show. We got JC, and we'll have Seth, Harp, and Crooks break down some of the Gator stuff and around the world of sports. Let's go to the take home hotline. We're going to be joined by JC. Good morning, JC. How are you doing? On the take home hotline. What hat do you have on? I can't see.
We're wearing the Boston Bruins. The Bruins are the only team in NHL history to get to 100 points this quickly during a regular season. And if they continue at this pace, they will catch the Montreal Canadiens who had 135 points in the mid-70s. Now, the thing is that the President's Cup was awarded to the team with the most points, and typically they don't win the Stanley Cup. But this team is so good, and some of the moves they've made at the trade deadline, I got to think this is their year.
Okay.
And you got to get people you're sitting at. In Dallas, they're leading their division and conference as well. So it's a good year for hockey. Team down here, they'll also they're going to have a hard road. Maybe lose in the first round.
When do the playoffs start?
In a month, in 1 month. So they got to get in March, and then in April, mid-April, will start, and it goes until June. I mean, it's kind of like the NBA.
No, I know.
It goes forever. So anyway, baseball, will be starting by the time the NHL playoffs start. Major League Baseball. I guess at some point in a month or so, we'll do our picks for the baseball QB, and who we think's going to win the World Series and so forth, division wild cards. And right now, the NFL draft is also a focal point here in April. So, March Madness, and then we get into those April time periods, and these next 2 months are going to be a lot of fun. You get spring sports. Baseball is going to heat up this weekend here in Kansas. I'm sure Kyle and Seth will discuss that at length with the Hurricanes. Miami Hurricanes.
Hurricanes.
Yeah.
Some other things in Gator sports, obviously tomorrow, LSU Gator basketball, last regular season game before they head to the SEC tournament.
Yes.
I did realize this. Obviously, softball's 11-3 right now. They lost 3 games out in their West Coast swing, but I did realize this. But they had an interesting series this weekend at UAB, Alabama, Birmingham.
Yeah.
You know why I think that's very interesting?
Tell me why, QB.
Well, Tim Walton's son pitches for UAB.
He does.
So all I'm thinking of is Tim was making the schedule last year.
Yeah.
He's probably like, I wonder if UAB's playing baseball in Birmingham this weekend. We'll set up a series to go there. It's his last year to pitch for the Blazers. So I got to think. At least I should say I didn't look up the UAB baseball schedule. I'm hoping they're playing at home. But I'm pretty damn sure they're playing in Birmingham.
Right. Since when does Florida travel to Birmingham to play UAB softball? I mean, when is that? So good for it works out for
we got a couple of texts here on the Titan from our text line. This must be from the other day. Says Bryce Young is a much better QB than Mac Jones. Latrell Sprewell played at Bama. Tell JC there's a track record of questionable people that play there. Laugh out loud.
Well, he did play out there, and he was very good. Robert Horry played there. A bunch of players that played in the NBA played there. We talk about Mac Jones. How about this? Anthony Richardson in 2021 had a 59%, completion percentage. 8.3 yards per attempt. In 22, last year, it went from 59 down to 54, 7.8 yards per attempt in 22. And we're talking about this guy being top 10 pick.
Well, he's probably going to be. He's definitely a top 10 pick, and I'm rooting for him.
I hope so.
I don't know how. I mean, like I told you, these dudes get enamored with athleticism and things of that nature. But
maybe
usually the tech don't lie. The eye in the sky don't lie, as they say. So we'll see. We'll see. I still think C.J. Stroud will be the first quarterback taken. But
we're the only two people in America who think that. It feels like
that's not true.
No, really, it's not true at all.
No.
I don't know. I haven't heard. I've heard him. I've heard Will Levis, and that guy being picked before C.J. Stroud. I don't know what people drink. I mean, it's not.
Well, everybody has their own theory on or how they go about picking things. And like I told you, they really get enamored with size, arm strength, speed, those type things, because coaches and at that level think they can make you a football player, make you think and process information and all that. And sometimes it happens, but more times than it does not happen. Because if you have not processed information and made decisions thrown accurately at the high school level, at the college level, there's no way you're going to do it at the pro level. The game is way too fast. Way too fast.
I don't see why this is that complicated. To me, it's pretty obvious. It's not going to work out. I mean, but I could be wrong. Look, Ryan Leaf was a big, tall, strong man. Didn't really pan out. Marcus Russell didn't really pan out. There are countless other ones who were big, tall, strong guys that they got enamored with. They wasted their draft capital. And I'd be shocked if Anthony and Will Levis go before C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. The NFL draft is crazy. So I don't even know when is it. The end of April, I'll take it.
Yeah, mid to late April.
Yeah, mid to late April. Okay. All right. We just got a text here on the Titan Mark text line. It is from William. And by the way, it was from yesterday because we're taped. Hopefully, we can be going live here soon. But it was referring to, as you just stated, about everybody enamored over Anthony Richardson very long. When I see we got an article attached to it talking about how he's tearing up the interview process. I don't even remember what the interview process was about, but as Coach Spurrier would always say, I don't know why they hired that guy. He must be really good in his interviews.
Yeah.
He can't coach a lick.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that continue to get hired because they interview well, but they don't perform or coach well. So I don't even remember what the interview process was about. So we'll see. And like I said, I'm pulling for Anthony. I mean, he's going to go first round, no question about that. But we'll see where he goes and go from there. Anything else standing out? Have you been watching the combine stuff at all, JC?
No, I've been watching not much of that. I'm kind of just waiting for, I love golf this time of year because it's here in Florida. Bay Hill Classic or Bay Hill Invitational this weekend, and then we've got TPC next weekend. So that kind of gets my radar screen going. I start to watch, not much of, but I start looking at a little NBA because we're getting toward the last part of the season. But hockey is big for me, and then spring sports here at UF. But, the thing with the spring sports at UF is that they're not playing. In my mind, these games aren't that great, but this weekend we're going to see a change in that. I hope. I'd like to see some competitive baseball. I'm more the kind of guy that wants to see Florida beat Miami, but it would mean more to me if they won games, 10-8, 7-5, something like that.
They scored 1 million runs.
That's what I'm saying. I want to see if they can score 10 runs on Miami, somebody like that, and that would be cool to me. I know that Jay beat them earlier in the week, but it almost looks like it doesn't matter because they're almost playing these games in the middle of the week as if they're exhibition games.
They are.
And so, I guess that's the point, then. Just go out there and practice.
Well, the middle of the week games are worthless. They're not to me, but to the fans. Because the fans think you should go, they play 52 games, well, they think you should go 52 and 49-3. You're not going to win those games because you usually pitch your younger guys and guys that aren't in your rotation. Can you foul them if somebody gets hurt to try to find out? They're equivalent to me as when the Troys of the world or Southern Miss or Charleston Southern rolling in for football.
No, it's not. And I get it. I understand you got to keep these arms fresh. You got to let a lot of guys get out there on the hill and throw. And you got to protect your best pitchers for the weekend. That makes total sense. It's been this way since the beginning of time. But that's why I kind of go, well, whatever happened the other day is fine. It doesn't matter. You know, and typically we're used to seeing Florida compete for some sort of tournament spot in basketball. But in the last few years, that's just not going to be the case. And, you know, look, they got LSU coming in here and senior day, I get it. But right now, Seth asked me the other day, if they were to go to the NIT and win it, would you hang a banner? I said, absolutely, I would. It's an accomplishment.
Well, you always have to hang a banner when championships, regardless of what it is.
Right. So I'd be pretty fired up if they got to the NIT, have maybe one or two more home games, actually. And then we'll see how they do. I mean, a lot of teams that play the NIT, their season extends past many of the teams that go to the NCAA tournament. They're eliminated in the first and second round. And that's in 2 weeks. We got Selection Sunday coming a week from Sunday. A week from Sunday.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's right around the corner. Chris Dorian Mortgage at Mortgage Lending Right, helping home buyers throughout games in North Central Florida. Call Chris Dorian Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. JC, you probably don't know who this is, but I'm kind of jealous. If I was back home, I would be heading over to TPC early next week for the concert that they put on for the military appreciation that night.
Okay.
This dude is a star and he's so good. His name is Riley Green.
Okay.
He played quarterback at Jacksonville State University.
Yeah.
Tried to make it in the league. I think he got cut. He probably didn't make it to a camp, but he is a superstar in the country music field. So good.
The only name that I'm hearing much about these days is Morgan Wallen. By the way,
yeah, they're different types of stars. This guy actually opens up for Morgan Wallen.
So there are some people, believe it or not, who haven't even heard of Morgan Wallen up north, and I can't believe that. But he's given a free concert in Nashville this season, so you might want to.
Morgan Wallen has shattered pretty much, I think, every one of Bart Brooks' records. So
it's pretty impressive.
So this has now become
and he's got
television.
He's got
entertainment tonight. But yes, Morgan Wallen is outstanding. Riley Green is outstanding. I'm ticked I'm not going to be able to see that.
You could go right where you are, and I know you're busy 24 hours a day, but if you just walk right on over to Fort Worth and went into Billy Bob's, you'd see some of the best country music you've ever seen in your life. It's not well done yet. So just think about that before you leave Dallas for to come back home eventually in a month or two. Try to get Billy Bob's before you leave over there in Fort Worth, okay? Do yourself a favor. You will not be disappointed.
Okay, I'll make sure to do that.
When are you done with the season in the Guardians? How long is it go?
Well, pretty much this is the third week, so you got a 10-week season.
Okay, so another month and a half, right?
And then, so yesterday, as you said, the Arnold Palmer Invitational there at Bay Hill kicked off. I was shocked. I just saw. I didn't see any of it yesterday, but Cameron Young, who's a guy I love, he tore it up. Usually, you don't see these dudes shoot those scores on the scores. What happened?
It's got to be that he kept the ball out of the rough. But 900 bar in the first round, Arnie would not be thrilled with that if he was still alive.
He'd be talking to the greenskeepers.
Well, I think he'd be saying, we got to do something with these greens. We haven't had any weather, so there's no reason why these greens shouldn't be really, really slick. And I think next week, I don't know if TTC greens will defend that course somewhat because there has been no rain. It's been hot, and you can really make these greens just go blue, meaning that they'll be super fast. But 900, what a great round. And God, who's so long, he can take some of those holes at Bay Hill and destroy them. Specifically, number 16, which I think is a par 5 on the back nine. That's easily reachable at 2. There are a couple of holes out there that you could have a wedge in on par 4s. So with that in mind, number 13, or is it 12? Yes, 13. That's a simple iron wedge shot as a par 4. That's the kind of golf I like to play. But for these guys, that's too easy. I mean, that's just too easy. And so they'll just destroy that. And I wouldn't be shocked if this guy ran away and won 20 on the par. How about Camilo? Camilo's still out there playing. He's tied for fourth. He's 5 under par. He's shot, actually, right now, he's 1 under through 4 holes. They're playing right now, as a matter of fact. So Camilo is Jagus is 5 under par from the Gator down at Bay Hill. So keep an eye on him.
Is that at Bay Hill or is that the Puerto Rico tournament?
God, the Puerto Rico tournament.
So that's Kim. That ain't.
Jesus, we're both
That's
idiots.
Carson. That's Carson.
Why do you want to leave me like that?
I just noticed that John Rahm flew the damn thing, and I picked John Rahm. That's crazy because what happens is on the app that JC and I use, it has that scores, but it has Arnold Palmer Invitational.
That is, can we go back and rewind and retake that last 21?
Hey, but Cam Young is 5 under par. He's in second.
And how about
that's great. That's great radio right there.
we're really
We're talking about the long term.
oh my God. But I was talking about Cam Young doing things that I thought he did that he really didn't do except he did it in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
All right, so anyway, we're idiots. Cam Young.
Carlos, I was looking at that leaderboard and going, damn, none of the stars are playing with their crap.
Camilo, the only reason why you looked at that twice is Camilo wasn't invited to Bay Hill.
You're right. You would not have said his name because I go, he's already playing.
Yeah.
There's no way he's teed off already.
Well, we're looking at the same now, but looking at the different tournaments. But John Rahm, come on, this guy. Why is he so hot? I mean, why is he so good? This is unbelievable. I mean, would you be surprised if he won 20 on the par? I can say that. John Rahm. Your boy Shaw is playing well. Canton is good. Fowler has played actually better here in the last couple of weeks. Scotty Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, this is quite a leaderboard. It's Adam Scott, Molinari. He's a world-class player. So good for the Bay Hill. I wish you and I were a little bit more. Well, listen. Okay.
It's very good.
It's so good. Good job. It's so good.
But,
wow, that was classic right there. I hope that doesn't go on. Look at these two idiots talking about the Mario Invitational in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Already moving, he had to keep moving down to San Juan. Oh, help us, Lord.
are you the market to buy or sell your home? Doreen Weeby, a realtor with Caldwell Banker, and in Paris provide investment advice. So call her today at 352-562-1411 to help your dreams come true. A lot of spring football is cranked up there. You see Gators crank up tomorrow.
Cool. That's good. Yeah. Hey, I'm going.
Already cranked it up.
I'm going to the Utah game. Me and a mutual friend of ours, former player, is going to be in Salt Lake on Thursday night. What do you think of that? I can give you a live. Well, actually, you don't do that.
I'm going to be there. I was thinking, I'm trying to figure out my travel schedule, and it's really hard because when you're on that charter flight, you ain't got to deal with nothing.
That's right.
And so I'm thinking, do I want to fly out early
And stay late,
or do I want to
fly with the charter,
fly on the charter and do some things and then fly commercial back?
Well, I can. Yeah.
Do I just want to fly on the charter there and back?
Right. Well, I say choice two because I can give you some info that heavily interests you for that Friday and Saturday. So, I think you will consider it. So, but like I said, our friends going to be there. We got a bunch of friends. So, Utah Utes, man, Salt Lake City. Who would have thought Florida would ever be playing Salt Lake? I think it's great. I love that they scheduled this series.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting too to see if their quarterback is going to be ready. I don't think he will.
He got hurt?
He blew his ACL out.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure for the ACL. Speaking of ACL, terrible break for Tennessee. Their guard, and they're going to miss him. And it's just a bad break for return time, man. That's the worst. That's terrible. It's bad. It's bad break in time. But Tennessee, they're going to play out this weekend. Auburn has got to win some games to get themselves back in the picture. I think they're going to. I have a feeling Auburn's going to make it.
Yeah, it's going to be close. So we'll see. SEC tournament cranks up next week. Tournaments start. A lot of those smaller conferences, mid-major starting, I think this week. So it's a fun time of the year. We'll have more to talk about on Monday. Not a whole lot to talk about today. We kind of butchered the program talking about the Puerto Rican program.
Well, I'm just off the realize down there. We really idiots.
Yeah.
Gary Young is in Orlando. Carson is in Puerto Rico. Okay.
Yeah. So, all right, JC. Kyle, Crooks, and Seth. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.
You get good luck with the Guardians this weekend. We're going to be watching. Hopefully, you get
that. JC joins us on the Titan Ball Hotline. We'll take a quick timeout and turn it over to Seth and Kyle Crooks. You're watching and listening to Podup Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back. All right, JC.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peaceland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Okay.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. You know, making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors.
All right, welcome back. Second half of Podup Matthews in the morning. Kyle Crooks waiting on Seth Harp to join us in just a little bit. A lot going on here in Gator Athletics, of course, in pro sports as well. So we'll touch on that, waiting on Seth to join us in just a little bit. I'm back from Greenville, South Carolina, the SEC women's basketball tournament. So we got back yesterday. Obviously, a disappointing end to, or really start to the SEC tournament for women's basketball. The men's basketball team will have LSU coming up on Saturday, senior day, and it'll be interesting if they win that game. There's a good chance that they go to the NIT. You have baseball this weekend, which takes on Miami, first of three starting tonight. I believe Saturday sold out, so that should be a lot of fun. Softball's on the road at UAB. And with that, we welcome in the great, the incomparable Seth Harp. He's joining us now. Seth, how are you, my friend?
Hey, man. Happy Friday to you. I think March is here. The madness will commence. Unfortunately, Florida Gators won't be a part of either madness, correct?
The NIT is still madness, right? It's some sort of different type of madness.
It's something, all right. Look, for where Todd Golden and company is, I guess it may not be the worst thing in the world to have, a couple extra games. It depends on what you do with it, right? If you get, knocked out right away, then it's meaningless. If you can go to New York and win it, it's kind of one of these things we've always joked about. If you're the Gators and you win an NIT title, you hang the banner in the O'Connell Center. Do you make a big deal out of it? But, I think it's unfortunate what happened with the women. the way it happened, how it all went down. But you know, it was kind of that type of year. Just couldn't get a grasp on things, right, Kyle? I mean,
Yeah.
you broadcast all the games. I think with the men, you know, having the two of the bottom feeders, if you will, you know, Georgia and LSU to close the year and get a little momentum, and then getting to take on maybe I was looking at the thing, maybe they could play Arkansas in the first round of the SEC tournament, then have to turn around and play Alabama. So it'll be interesting to see how that arc takes them. So again, it's one of these things where it's just weird that neither of them. I mean, the women predominantly in the last 10 years, we've known that making the tournament is a goal, right? With the men's team, it's almost become an expectation, even though it hasn't happened. And this will be what, the third time in 7 years that they haven't made the tournament.
Yeah.
One of those years was the COVID year that they were bubblish, right? So it'll be interesting to see where Todd Golden and everybody goes from here when it comes to where this organization or where these basketball programs sit. I was thinking about something. Again, Seth, Harp, Kyle Crooks with you here on this Friday edition of Podup with Matthews in the morning. Of course, courtesy of the Titan MRI hotline. And also, if you have a Facebook Live question, fire away. Courtesy of Meldon Law, the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Watching the combine, Anthony Richardson. You know, his big day's coming up. I was thinking about this, and I was wondering if I should even ask this question. Is it a good thing or a bad thing for Gator football if he becomes the number 1 pick in the draft? And I'll preface this, all right, Kyle, before I put you on the spot with this one, baby. You didn't see this one coming. Is it a good thing or a bad thing for the program if he goes number 1 overall? Because you would 99% of the time say, of course it's a great thing. It's a fantastic thing for the program. Our player went number 1 overall, means the number 1 pick in the draft. I'm trying to think of the last Florida Gator to go number 1 overall. Can you think of one? I can't think of one off the top of my head. If he goes number 1 overall, and he's a guy that 50% of the fan base, if not more, said, I can't wait till he goes. Can't wait till he gets out of here. And he enters the draft, and he goes number 1 overall. And he's also a guy that led you to a 6-6 record. What does that mean for the Gator football program with the number 1 overall pick, all these intangibles that they couldn't win with him? So Kyle Crooks, I'll put that question to you. Is it a good thing or a bad thing if Anthony, I can't believe this, if Anthony Richardson goes number 1 overall?
Yeah, I think it's undoubtedly a good thing for the program. I think you made a good point with the fans kind of, and I think rightfully so, right? He had his flaws. A lot of this is on projection for Anthony Richardson. A lot of it is he's going to be this, he's going to be that. He has all the tangible things, the arm, the size. He can run. He's built like a brick wall as a quarterback, which more and more, obviously, we have running quarterbacks now, and Anthony Richardson fits that mold. I think it says more, Seth, about maybe the roster around him. The first year, kind of where Gator football is, right? First year head coach, roster turnover. We had a ton of people transfer out at the end of this year, so you wonder about buy-in and all of that stuff. I think it says more about his development, his shot to be a starting quarterback when Emory Jones leaves. I mean, he was just kind of getting the wheels turning here as a starting quarterback. The roster around him, and the flux, how the whole coaching staff was in flux. You lose Mullen, you bring in a first-year head coach. So I think there's a lot of variables that go into maybe the lack of success or some of the successes that Anthony Richardson had. I don't foresee him as the number 1 pick, but the more and more you hear analysts, whether it's Mel Kiper or others, saying that, you know, my team, the Indianapolis Colts, could trade up for Anthony Richardson, that obviously would be a giant gamble.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it says more about the situation, Seth, around Anthony. We saw some real incredible moments. You remember the Utah game, right? The spinning throw to the end zone. You know, he was the Heisman after week 1. We saw the highest of the highs. And then we saw the ball float into the end zone against Vanderbilt into the 7th row on a Hail Mary attempt. You see the lows of the lows. You see some bad interceptions. But man, I see the potential, but this is a project. And to take a project like that, number one in the NFL draft, that takes some cojones.
Well, let me take a step back then and ask you this. What if he succeeds right away?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me turn this. Sorry, Kyle. I my bad. So I can explain to people what I'm thinking here. So it's not you and I are on the same page with what I'm about to ask. But let me just explain this. Because for what we heard for years was, since I have been in the state, first it was Will Greer, right? Treon Harris. What do we do? And then it turned into, Felipe Franks comes in and, what do we do? Oh my gosh, he's struggling. He can't win. And then Kyle Trask takes over. And then it almost became, well, take Kyle out and put Emory in. And then it became Emory against Anthony Richardson. So we've had this cavalcade of time and time again, this guy against this guy, this guy against this guy. So the question is, does this school, no matter who the head coach is, take the time to develop the quarterback, right? The only one, I guess you could say, that was inserted that was instantly successful was Kyle Trask, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the only one. So if Anthony Richardson is a project, and I think we think that he is, and somehow let's say he doesn't even go number one, Kyle, say he goes 10th, 9th to the Panthers, and he's good, and he's rookie of the year type of stuff good. What does that then do to the narrative?
I think that wouldn't be, whether fair or not, that would be fans then going after Billy Napier.
Okay.
They didn't coach him well enough. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. And then us as people that maybe are a little bit more grounded in this stuff and are around it more, you'd have to be like, well, you're stepping into a situation that was pretty chaotic with the Gator football program. Let's be honest. So there's a lot of things going on. There are a lot more variables to maybe the lack of success that this Gator football program had. It wouldn't look good. Sure, it wouldn't look good, but that's why he gets drafted so high. And I think this coaching staff realized the potential of Anthony Richardson. They would kill to have this guy back on the roster this year. They know the potential's there. But if you put him in the right situation in the NFL, would it surprise me if Anthony Richardson had a very good year? No. Maybe as a passer a little bit, it would surprise me. But if you got him in an offseason with NFL coaches, and apparently he's impressed at the combine, Seth, but that's where I don't think there's any surprise there. No. Anthony Richardson is a guy that has a lot of the tangible things. He can throw the ball far. He's, the one thing that I'll say is he's interviewed very well too. He's apparently interviewed better than any of the quarterbacks at the combine, but we know that. We know Anthony is a guy that is incredibly smart. He's been in front of the media the last couple of years. So I think it would turn the flames, the people holding the angry torches. I think that would turn towards the Gator coaching staff, because be like, how did we not see this? Which would be unfair.
Yeah,
it would be unfair.
And we see that all the time, don't we? See guys that are successful at the next level because they mature differently at the next level. They fit a different type of scheme at the next level. And I just think it's going to be fascinating to watch his development, how the reaction takes place to his development. Because let's face it, and here's a point that I want to make with this. I want to put a little bow on this. Patrick Mahomes. What was Texas Tech his last year? What was their record? 606?
Yeah.
They were 500, right? So he goes to the NFL and becomes a bona fide superstar. So what happens to Cliff Kingsbury's stock, who just gets let go at Texas Tech? He becomes an NFL head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And they use the number 1 overall pick. He gets to push Josh Rosen aside, which wasn't the worst thing in the world, and bring in Kyler Murray and build an entire team around Kyler Murray in Arizona. Something tells me if Anthony Richardson went to the NFL, number 1 overall, and was successful, people wouldn't do the same thing with Billy Napier. People wouldn't say, oh my gosh, Billy Napier needs to be the next head coach of the Vikings. Let's get him in here right now. Let's rebuild this whole organization. Look what he did with Anthony Richardson. It's not exactly the same parallel, Kyle, but it's just going to be fascinating because you're right. Everybody's going to pounce all over Billy Napier if Anthony Richardson is successful right away. But when Patrick Mahomes was successful right away, Cliff Kingsbury became an instant NFL coach. And he had success for a little while until he and Kyler Murray fell out, and that turned into a disaster. So it'll just be interesting to watch the reaction. Got all sorts of comments rolling in here, Kyle, courtesy of Facebook Live, courtesy of Meldon Law. Let's see here. Kenny writing in, he says, if Anthony Richardson is successful in the NFL, it makes Dan Mullen even a bigger schmuck.
I think Dan Mullen probably going to be an NFL offensive coordinator in the next couple of years.
Well, I always think it's funny. Dan Mullen led you guys to 3 straight major bowl games,
and that's interesting, Seth. The narrative around Dan Mullen is I get the recruiting side of it. I understand that, but you make a great point. Yeah. He had a lot of success here, folks. He went to an SEC championship game, played Alabama, the best that anybody had played Alabama that year. Back-to-back New Year's 6 bowls. He did an outstanding job in those. The recruiting towards the end, the move probably had to happen. I agree with it. But you can't just wipe history to attend to what you want to feel and think. No. He had success here. He was not a failure. So that all that narrative is, to me, is ridiculous. Did the move have to happen? Yes. Was he a complete failure? Absolutely not.
I mean, we were talking about going into that LSU game, whether or not he should get a long-term extension and get paid $8, $9, $10 million a year. And look, it did fall apart on him. It fell apart on him, and he wasn't mature enough to handle it because he wasn't dressing up like Darth Vader and going, picking fights with Missouri players. That's all fine when you're winning, but the minute you lose, that wears kind of thin, right? It's like Gilbert Gottfried's voice. It's good when you're in a good mood, but when you're in a bad mood, it's not so good. So I just think it's fascinating how the revisionist history on Dan Mullen, and this happened with my alma mater where PJ Fleck was a football coach and had success, took us to the Cotton Bowl, like I played, but went to the Cotton Bowl, and then he leaves to go to Minnesota, and I've got, I'm glad he's gone. Oh, no, you're not. Come on, what are we thinking here? I'm glad that he's gone, but it's one of these things. And look, Billy Napier may be better in the long run, but Dan Mullen was successful here in what he did. It's one of those things where you're dating an 8 or you're dating a 9 and you're like, well, she's not a Victoria's Secret supermodel. So it's like, what are our expectations here? Let's see here. A couple other things. I can talk about Dan Mullen, everything that's going on. Kenny writes, says, remember Trask was on the bench until Mullen had to play him. Mullen was way hyped, terrible. Guys, he won 10. He went to 3 major bowl games. Fine. You want to hate on him, guys? Go ahead. Be those guys. And then you wonder why this program struggles when you cry and complain about when you're upset with success. All right.
Yeah.
Shame on you. Shame on you guys. Let's see here. Couple other things rolling in. Joe, it's not going to be a good look for Florida if he balls out in the NFL. No way around it. Okay. I disagree.
You can look at the narrative that way. That's an easy way to look at it. I get it, but there's a lot more that went into the struggles of the Florida Gators this past year than Anthony Richardson. Maybe from a cursory glance, it's not going to look good if Anthony Richardson is balling out, but there's a lot more things, a lot more issues with this roster that Billy Napier is now trying to fix under a first-year head coach. You just gotta let things bake a little bit with the Gator football program, and you got to understand what AR was trying to play around in year 1. So.
Trying to make a Thanksgiving dinner, Kyle. This is not a Hot Pocket. It takes some time to cook this thing. Joe writing in courtesy of Meldon Law. We spend too much time talking about a QB that doesn't even play here for us anymore. But we can't get a breakdown on our new defensive coordinator. As much research as you guys do, y'all do, you got to know something about him. If not, maybe it's a good homework assignment. Well, Joe, I don't want to ever hear you talk about Steve Spurrier again because he's not a quarterback here anymore either. Right? Joe, never again. I never want to hear you ever talk about Steve Spurrier, Emmitt Smith, Tim Tebow ever again, Joe. Ever. Not here anymore. research about guys. He's never been to DC before. He's an assistant in Alabama.
He's 29 years old too.
So what do you want me to say? You know what, Kyle? I can't wait. In the Utah game, it's going to be 3rd and 6 in the third quarter. And the tendency on him in 3rd and 6 in the third quarter is he runs a veer. And what he does is he'll run a stunt. What do you guys want me to do here? It's March 2nd, March 3rd. What do you a breakdown on the defensive coordinator? Can we watch the spring game? Can I see what he runs?
Yeah.
Ready, Joe? Well, 11-1. 11-1. And the one loss will be to Vanderbilt at home. All right. Sorry, Kyle, I had to.
No, I mean, I love the passion from the fans, and I love the eagerness to get more information and all of that. But the guy hasn't had a press conference yet. He hasn't coached a single rep in practice yet. Let's wait. We'll hold off. Spring game. We'll let you know everything that you need to know.
I gotta see it first, man. It's one of those things that anybody that does predict, I always like Kyle, talk show hosts, and I've been doing this since I was 15. So oh my gosh, 30 years now, almost 28. And I always get a kick out of people, and I just kind of go down a little of a path here, that people do predictions for the upcoming season before the NFL draft after the schedule release. It's like this: win, loss, win, week 7, win. It's like, you don't even know who you drafted yet. How are you making predictions? You don't even know who your quarterback is yet.
Famous win-loss game. Win, loss.
Win, loss. Oh, we're going to win on the road in week 12 in Detroit. Okay. Yeah. Sure thing. Okay, so the Anthony Richardson thing, as I was watching the combine, I thought, if he's successful, is that good or bad? What's the narrative? So I wanted to dive into that first and foremost. A couple other things that are on the horizon. I know we've talked about conference realignment. We've talked about the Florida States and the Clemsons of the world that, for whatever reason, are going in there, and they're trying to shake down a couple more percent. And there is no way that the SEC is going to add them, because I've said it time and time again. If the SEC wanted them, Kyle, they already have them. Mm-hmm. Okay, they in the $120 million buyout and all those things. If you, Kyle Crooks, crystal ball that's covered this conference, that I'm sure by now you've been in every town or city in this conference and broadcasted games. You get the feel of it. I'm going to put you on a spot with something else. You ready?
Ready.
Everybody adds value to this conference for the most part. For the most part. When the Big Ten added Rutgers and Maryland, it wasn't about Rutgers and Maryland football. It was about New York City and the 11 million people in the metro that they could sell the direct TV, whatever, Big Ten network, Dish TV. They could pump the Big Ten network into New York City and charge cable providers across the board for access to it, thus increasing the TV revenue. When they added Maryland, it was because of Baltimore and it was because of DC. The additions of A&M brought Houston and Dallas into the fray, and Missouri, looking back on it, brought in St. Louis and Kansas City. I don't know how much impact, but those are top 30 markets. Kyle, who would you like to see the SEC add? And is it time to kick the Mississippi schools out because they do not offer anything financially or really in the big term competitively? They don't add anything to the growth of the conference. 2 questions. I hate 2-part questions. I shouldn't have done it to you. Let's start with, I'm mad that I asked the second one first. So let's ask this. Who would you like to see added in this?
Well, I love the addition of Oklahoma and Texas.
I do too.
For me, somebody who, outside of football and basketball and all that, but covering softball here at the University of Florida, having Oklahoma in this conference and the possibility of having them in a 3-game set, KC Show Presley Stadium, excites me. That's an all-time generational program. I love the addition of those two. It's going to skyrocket all the revenue for sure. I don't want to see Florida State in the SEC. I think, racking my brain, I would say maybe Clemson would be the best fit, I guess. Like you said, it's not a big TV market or anything like that, but you're bringing in, I think Clemson has grown into more of a national brand with what they've done in football over the last half decade or so. Basketball, they're not terrible. I would say, and then I think, Duke, North Carolina, that just feels ACC to
Yeah,
me.
okay.
Basketball. You can't mess with that, right? I would say Clemson. I'm trying to think of any other schools, Seth, like in the Big 12 or anything like that I would add. I I know UCF's going to the Big 12, right? Next year. We don't want to see them as Florida guys. I would say Clemson's the big one.
Okay,
If I think of another one, just because of the football success, basketball, they're not terrible. Great football game day environment. I would say Clemson for me.
If I were the SEC czar, I'd kick both Mississippi schools out. I'd break up with them. Look, people get divorced all the time. I mean, bye. And I'd add Duke and Carolina. That way, now I have Duke and Carolina in Kentucky. Right? I've got some play in there, and I know Seth, you're going to break up the ACC. Okay. I mean, sorry, not sorry. I'm more concerned about my growth than theirs. And I know, let's face it, the Syracuses and the Pitts and those were Big East schools. The Big East broke up. They tore Yankee Stadium down. You know what? Babe Ruth retired. There are other options out there. Life does go on. Michael Jordan retired, although it's tough for people in my generation to accept that. I also, I'd like to see Duke and Carolina come in. That's only if you boot the Mississippi schools, because adding them doesn't do much for your football. It wouldn't. The other school that I really, really, really would like to see in this conference is Miami.
Yeah,
I would, and I mean, it's crazy to say this, but Miami's basketball program has been more successful the last 6 or 7 years than the football program. But I tell people this time and time again: when the Big Ten expands, if they go Washington or they go Oregon, the school that the Big Ten has always wanted their hands on is Georgia Tech, because they want Atlanta. So I always say Georgia Tech and Miami is where the Big Ten's looking next. Those are markets, 7 and market 9. They want to round out that portfolio and have 7 or 8 of the top 10 media markets in the country. I just, as I take a step back and I look at all this, and with, of course, Clemson and Florida State has caused this debate with, wanting their land right deals and wanting more money out of this. And expansion will happen again. With the question if the Big Ten adds Washington and Oregon at a reduced rate and all those, I just wonder what conference is eventually going to go out there and say, you know what, we're done doing all this stuff. It's time to grab the big picture and let's just mega expansion. Let's go for it. Kind of like what the ACC did when they expanded so much back in 2002, just a massive grab. So again, nobody ever talks about kicking schools out. I know that we had a comment in here that says get rid of Vanderbilt. You're not getting rid of Vanderbilt, guys, because Vanderbilt's the second biggest market in the SEC.
Nashville.
It's Nashville. You're not getting rid of, guys. It's about TV markets. It's about TV markets. Kenny writes in, add Texas Tech and USF. And maybe Miami. Okay, I can see Miami. What do you want Texas Tech for?
Yeah, that just doesn't fit.
What do you want that for? That's Mississippi State 2.0. What do you want that nonsense for? Anyway, but I know, just have a little fun here on this Friday as this next round of expansion starts to heat up. We're in the final weekend of the men's college basketball season. Your gut right now, Kyle. I'm not going to ask you to fill out a bracket because that's boring as boring can be on the air. So let's do this. Who, from what you've seen this year, who would you like to see in Miami? Who would you like to see in Houston? Who are the 4 teams that, if you could check boxes right now, that, okay, these are the 4 teams that I would like to see?
Yeah, I would say probably number 1 would be, well, Houston's number 1 in the country right now. Alabama is the interesting conundrum, I think, going into the tournament, because they beat Auburn the other day, and the first thing I noticed was the body language from Brandon Miller. He almost looked like he just wanted to get back to the locker room. It seems like, they were down double figures to Auburn at home. They had the scare against South Carolina on the road all since this has happened. And this could have been, I think, if the Darius Miles stuff, if Brandon Miller doesn't get dragged into this, I think it's still very much a generational team, and you don't talk a lot about the distraction But this Brandon Miller aspect of it, I feel like more is going to come out during the tournament. Guys, you might want to mute, just producer, if you can mute your mic for a second, just so we can hear the whole conversation.
We'll just talk over him, baby.
All right. So you got Houston. I think so. I talked about Alabama. You got Purdue. Purdue's had somewhat of an up and down February in moments. I would say Purdue's in that mix. I feel like I'm going chalk here. Get rid of Houston. I don't think Houston makes a Final Four. I think you got Alabama, Purdue. I think Alabama finds a way to get to the Final Four. And Kansas, I think you throw Kansas in that mix again. Again, going chalk. I'm trying to think of somebody who could possibly. Does Tennessee make a run? Zakai Ziegler just got hurt, so that'll be an issue for them to make a deep run. That's Kansas, UConn. We saw UConn in the O-Dome early in the year. They're probably going to be on the 4 seed line. Can they make a run for old time's sake? It'd be nice to see UConn in the Final Four. I'll tell you this. So those are my 4 teams. A sleeper for me. If they win the A-Sun championship, I called Florida Kennesaw State for SEC Plus. Love their coach, the brother of Sharif Abdur-Rahim, who's the president of the G League. He has done an outstanding job, turned them from 2-win team to about on the precipice of winning the A-Sun, had all 5 returning starters. I'm talking Sweet 16 for Kennesaw State. So if you see them get in the tournament, folks, just know you heard it from me. If you want to make some extra money, if you do that type of stuff, Kennesaw State is, for me, the biggest sleeper underdog Cinderella in March that can make some noise, depending on the matchup. So if they don't get a nightmare matchup, but Kennesaw State, for me, would be the big sleeper.
Purdue talent-wise, but for whatever reason, Indiana's their kryptonite.
Yeah.
And that's one. Kyle, there's no school growing up there that I just despised more as a kid than Indiana and Indiana basketball and the lore and the Bobby Knight stuff. And I had a buddy that played for him, so it's like, oh my God. And it just we're in Indiana basketball, it's the same thing as Kentucky. It's like, no, it's not. But okay. It's still good. 30 years ago it was an elite program. They're dangerous because they got 2 good players. Or 2 NBA ready, let's go players. And it's something similar that we saw with Oral Roberts a couple years ago. Don't let the name fool you with Oral. That 2 NBA ready guys, let's go. And that's why they made that run all the way to the Sweet 16. As Gator fans painfully know, right? So I think Indiana, if they get in the right seeding and there can be some upsets, I don't know if they can get all the way to Houston, but they're going to get out of the first weekend. It's just a question of then. If they're a 4 seed and you're Houston and you're a 1 seed, I don't think you want to see Indiana as that 4 seed in the Sweet 16 just because of their athleticism. I like UCLA. Is also being that kind of sneak. He's a good coach. He's fantastic coach and what he's been able to do, and the fact that program, they're not back to what they were. Oh, good God, that's a program that'll never be back to what it was. Winning 9 titles in 11 years, you're never going to be back to that day. But I think they've reestablished themselves as the Pac-12 king. And then another team that people are falling asleep on, and I get it because it's not what it's been the last few years, is Gonzaga. That's a good basketball team.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good basketball team, especially if they can sit out west and they can be like a 3 seed. Well, I don't even know what seed line that they're on right now. But that's another team I think that can be dangerous just because they've got all those guys back. And, they haven't won championships, but we've said this a couple of times. Yeah, but they've been to the Final Four twice they've been in the championship game twice in the last 6 years. Is any other team in college basketball? North Carolina's been to the championship game multiple times in the last 6 years, but they're one of the only other ones. So here we go. Maybe last weekend of the regular season conference championships. And you don't fill out an SEC bracket, do you?
No, I don't. No. I do pay attention to it, but no, the bracket filling out days, I haven't done an NCAA bracket in a long time either. So maybe this year, who knows, just out of fun.
Before we wrap up, I know I always have the students there, the college journalism, do a bracket. Last year we did breakfast bracket, 64 greatest cereals of all time. We've done starch madness, so watching French fries go up against potato chips and things like that. This year, it's the Great American City bracket, Kyle. And I'll get it to Freddie and Shane and Podup. It's the 64 greatest American cities. Our 1 seeds are New York, LA, Chicago, and Philadelphia. So they're just give everybody a little bit of a clip of what's coming up for fun brackets outside of that. Quick reminder, I know we got to get going here. Pot Up with Matthews in the morning. It's been brought to you in part by QC Kinetics. If you have joint pain in your knees, shoulders, hip, or back that won't go away, check out QC Kinetics for long-lasting relief, not surgery, drugs, or downtime. Schedule your free consultation at QC Kinetics with locations in Ocala and now open in Gainesville. And also to Comfort Temp. Comfort is our business. Peace of mind is their promise. Beat the summer heat and schedule your air conditioner's tune-up today. I don't wait around for that. Keeping your chill in Florida, in the Florida heat. Keep that heat away. Comfort Temp, Heating and Air, 352-376-2366. All right, man. Thanks for hopping on. As always, I enjoy doing these things with you. I just wish we could do them more for multiple hours every single day. So
Yeah.
Wink, man. Wink. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. I know you got softball coming up this weekend, but we have conflicts on the radio all weekend long. So
yeah, Sky LeBron will actually be out there at UAB because I couldn't make the trip because I was in Greenville for the women's basketball tournament. But softball this weekend, you got baseball and RUF, so plenty. Men's basketball as well, so plenty to do.
All right, Kyle, as always, man, thanks for the time. I appreciate you giving us some time here this morning.
Good chatting with you, Seth.
Seth Harp, Kyle Crooks, Pot Up with Matthews in the morning. Everybody enjoy your weekend.